Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. This one, we're going to look at all of the changes that have happened in FPL. The last couple of days, there's been plenty of announcements, 5 different changes we're looking at, some small, some pretty big. We're going to go through them in this video and I'm going to explain them all in a way that's easily understandable, or as easily understandable as possible. But before we get into that, Fantasy Football Hub, if you haven't heard of it, do check it out. They're running a cool pre-season offer at the moment where if you sign up to them and you don't win your mini league, then you get your money back. It's literally a risk-free offer. Terms and conditions do apply, of course, so read them. But yeah, it is an absolutely risk-free offer. You sign up, if you don't win your mini league, then you get your money back. It's pretty simple. So do check them out. The link to them is in the description of this video. And Fantasy Football Hub is where I get all of my stats, and as you'll see as we get through this video, looking at stats is going to be even more important this season. So yeah, if you don't know about them or you're not signed up already, then do check the link in my description. But yeah, let's get straight into it with the first change. Okay, so the first change we're looking at is defensive contributions. Now, a lot of people have been calling for this in the past. Now they've brought it in. In other fantasy games it was a thing, but now it is also in FPL. So what this means, when we're talking about defensive contribution points, we're talking about blocks, tackles, interceptions, clearances, and then recoveries. Recoveries are only for midfielders and forwards only. So what it does mean basically is that for defenders, they need to hit 10 defensive contributions, so 10 defensive actions. So that can be made up of blocks, tackles, interceptions, and clearances. If they hit 10 of those in one match, then they get 2 points. It's quite simple. There's no 1 point. There's no anything for 5 defensive. There's nothing for more. It's literally if you hit 10 defensive contributions as a defender, you get 2 points. And it's very, very similar for midfielders and forwards. They need to hit 12 defensive contributions and they will get 2 points, and ball recoveries count for midfielders and forwards. Now, defensive contribution points are capped at 2 points per match for all players. So if a player was to get 20 defensive contributions, it wouldn't make any difference. So they'd only get 2 points. If a player was to get 5 defensive contributions, they get no points. It's literally 10 defensive contributions for 2 points or nothing. And so what this does do, what this means for us, is it brings in a few other players that weren't options before. The likes of defensive midfielders and the likes of centre-backs. So FPL did give some kind of a little bit of options or a little bit of kind of examples for what would have happened last season. Someone like Tarkowski at Everton. I mean, these teams that are going to be defending a lot, this will help for. It means that obviously they're not likely to get that many clean sheets, but if they're having to clear the ball, if they're having to tackle, if they're having to make interceptions, then they're going to get a lot of these points. So Tarkowski was the highest from last season. He got the most defensive contribution points. But yeah, basically it brings in centre backs, it brings in defensive midfielders. So they also gave other examples of people like Caicedo, Baleba, these defensive midfielders that kind of, that is their game. It's blocks, it's tackles, it's recoveries, things like that. They're the players that benefited well. Now, the one thing we're yet to see is obviously the prices haven't been released because the game hasn't launched yet as at the time of making this video. We're yet to see whether this is going to be reflected in their price. Players like Baleba, players like Caicedo are typically priced very, very cheap, in the 5 millions almost, because they're not going to get many goals, they're not going to get many assists. Now they do have a route to points, albeit it's only 2 extra points per game potentially. But it would be very interesting to see if they are priced a little bit higher because of that. What it means for us as well is that it might be easier to just have like a centre-back or a CDM. They'll typically be quite nailed players. So if you wanted to have kind of a 5th midfielder option or a 5th defender option as someone that's pretty nailed and potentially cheap, then you could have those just on your bench as kind of safe options if you need them. But yeah, defensive contributions are now here. Let's get into a second change now. Right, the second change is a very, very simple one. All the changes is all of the chips, so bench boost, free hit, triple captain, wildcard, we get 2 of them, 2 of every single one this season. So we get 1 of each to use in game weeks 1 to game weeks 19, and then we get a second one for the second half of the season from game week 20 onwards. Now, we have seen this previously where they've brought in 2 wildcards for the last couple of seasons. Now you get 2 of every single chip. As they say on their graphic here, more points, more choice, more fun, which is quite interesting. But yeah, it will take kind of a lot more planning now. Obviously, you don't necessarily need to wait until the very, very best option to use these chips. What it will mean is there'll be a couple of different strategies. I mean, technically, a lot of people use their wildcard to set up for a bench boost, because you're not just going to carry like a strong bench for most of the season. One interesting strategy that you could adopt here is, so you've got a wild card and a bench boost for the first half of the season. So let's say you wild card in game week 18, you bench boost in game week 19, then you get another bench boost in game week 20. So you could do wild card, then bench boost twice in a row. That means you've then basically only made 1 bench boost team. There'll be some interesting strategies. I'll do a video on it closer to when the game actually starts. But yeah, the second change is that we've got more chips this year. We get 2 of every single chip. 1 for the first half of the season and 1 for the second half of the season. Now, let's look at the next one. Okay, so the third change is there is now a change to how assists are given. So essentially, more assists are going to be given now, or more fantasy assists are going to be given. Now, there's a few different parts to this, but the first one is the whole kind of concept of intended destination. Now, last season and previous seasons, the case was if a fantasy assist wouldn't be awarded if a pass or a cross was deflected by the opponent away from its intended target. So this is an example I've got on screen here. So Marmoush is at the byline there. He's tried to cross it to, I think that's Phil Foden, or whoever that is nearer the goal. He's tried to cross it to Foden, but Konza has got a touch that's knocked it away. Now, underneath the tweet graphic you can see there is Bernardo Silva. Konza kind of deflects the ball towards Bernardo Silva and then he scores. That wasn't given as an assist for Marmoush. Now, this is where the rule changes for this year. So this year, it doesn't matter on the intended target. All that matters is there's kind of 2 criteria. One, if you're inside the box. So Bernardo Silva in this example was inside the box when he scored. The other example is that there's only 1 defensive touch before the ball reaches the person that scores the goal. So this season, this goal would be an assist for Marmoush because he played the ball in, Konza got 1 defensive touch on it, and then Bernardo Silva scored from inside the box. Now, we'll go into kind of the nuances in this about more defensive touches and outside the box, things like that, but the biggest kind of assist change is basically the intended target rule no longer matters. It's all about a cross or a pass happening, 1 defensive touch happening, and then the goal scorer being in the box. So, like I say, Bernardo Silva, this goal, Marmoush would have got the assist for it. Okay, so I mentioned that one of the kind of criteria for this rule is that the goal scorer has to be inside the box. Now, if the goal scorer is outside of the box, so let's say Marmoush plays this ball across, Konza gets a touch on it, and it comes all the way outside the box, and then a Man City player has a shot from outside the box and it goes in. Now, this is where the old rules would still be in play. So it'll be kind of a judgment call from FPL, and the intended target rule will still be in place. So, like I say, if Marmoush crosses this in, Konza gets a touch, it comes to the outside of the box, then a player from the outside of the box scores, then the intended target rule will still be in play. And given that Marmoush's cross was most likely for Foden here, it would not be an assist. So if it's outside of the box, it does completely change things. Right, and I also mentioned that it's 1 defensive touch. So in this example, Marmoush crossed it, there was 1 defensive touch from Konza, then Bernardo Silva scored. If there are 2 defensive touches, so as an example to this, let's say that Marmoush tries to cross it, it hits one defender, then it hits another defender, and then Bernardo Silva scores, it's not an assist. So it has to be only one defensive touch, and it has to be one defensive touch, and it has to be inside the box for it to be an assist. So the next part to this assist change is all to do with defensive errors. So last season and in previous seasons, if a goal was scored due to an unforced defensive error, then there was no fantasy assist. No fantasy assist was awarded. Whereas this season, the only defensive error that will disqualify a fantasy assist is if a defender is attempting a pass. And again, in this situation, it can only be one defensive touch for an assist to be awarded. So if there's two defensive touches, then no assist. But if there's one defensive touch, then it's fine. It can be an assist. So an example of this is this still shot on screen now. It's quite hard to see, but you can see where player number 20 is. That is Alex Scott, as in the player on the floor is Bournemouth's Alex Scott. He tried to play a pass to Semenyo, but Anthony Robinson tried to kind of block it or intercept it, and it didn't go really to plan, and Semenyo just went through and scored. So last season, Alex Scott wasn't given an assist for this, but this season, he would have got the assist. So he tried to pass the ball to Semenyo. There was one defensive error touch from Anthony Robinson, and then Semenyo went and scored. That will now be given as an assist if there's only one touch. So that is kind of the defensive errors is the second part of the assist change, and there is also one more part of it. Right, and the last part to this assist change is all to do with handballs. So last season, in order for an assist to be awarded for a penalty, the handball that caused the penalty had to be forced by the player. So the player that forced the handball would then get the assist if the penalty was scored. Whereas this season, that's changing. So all that matters is the handball doesn't have to be forced. All that matters is if there's a handball that leads to the penalty, it's whichever attacker had the last attacking action or the last touch. So in this example, obviously you can't really see it on screen, but this screenshot, so Everton won a penalty here. Joel Veltman, the Brighton player there, handballed. It was a handball by Joel Veltman, which meant that Everton won the penalty. Ndiaye scored it, so Ndiaye got the goal, but there was no assist given because it wasn't a forced handball. Whereas this season, if this exact situation were to happen, what has actually happened here is Jordan Pickford has played a long ball up, nobody's touched the ball, and then Joel Veltman's handballed it. So if Ndiaye goes to then score the penalty, that would mean that Jordan Pickford then gets the assist because he had the last touch. He had the last attacking action. He had the last touch on the ball before the handball occurred. So that is the last change to do with assists, and the assist changes are the most complicated ones. So the others are a bit more simple, but the assist changes are a little bit confusing. FPL have said that it should make it more simple, and we will get more assists because of it, which is a good thing. But yeah, it should make it more simple. It should be less controversial, but we'll see how that actually plays out. Anyway, let's get on to the fourth change now. Okay, right, this one is the fourth one, and it's much more simple than the assist one. So this is all to do with the AFCON Cup of Nations, which takes place this season in December and January. So the matches for the AFCON Cup of Nations are from game week 17 to game week 22. Now, not all players will be gone for that long. If they go out in the group stage, they'll come back early. But the tournament runs from game week 17 to game week 22. Now, because of that, what we get as FPL managers, we get some extra transfers based on that. So you can read it there. All managers will be topped up to the maximum possible number of 5 free transfers in game week 16 ahead of AFCON, regardless of how many they had before. So as kind of examples, if you go into game week 15 with 1 or 2 free transfers and you use both of them, meaning that you've got no free transfers left after game week 15, when it comes to game week 16, you'll have 5 free transfers. You just get automatically topped up to 5. And let's say there's another example where you're in game week 15, you've got 4 free transfers, you use 1, so you're rolling 3 over to game week 16. you'll then get topped up with an extra 2 to 5 free transfers, regardless of how many transfers you've got in game week 15 and how many you're rolling over to game week 16. You will enter game week 16 with 5 free transfers. So obviously what that means for us is that you most likely want to use up all your transfers in game week 15. You don't want to be rolling any over, because everyone will get a maximum of 5 anyway. So, I mean, it can be used as almost like a mini wild card, I guess, at this point. It means you can hold Salah, it means you can hold Mbeumo, these players on screen, and then you've got 5 free transfers to deal with them in game week 16 when they leave for the AFCON Cup of Nations. So this means that we don't really need to plan for the players leaving for AFCON Cup of Nations, because we get all of these free transfers to deal with it. So yeah, that is the 4 free transfer, and the last one relates to bonus points, so let's get into that. Okay, so the last change relates to bonus points. Now, we all know that the player who is top of the bonus points system at the end of the game gets 3 points, the player who's second gets 2, and the player who's third gets 1. Now, the numbers that calculate this ranking, the bonus points system, is changing slightly. There's not too many changes, it won't really affect too much, but the changes are as follows. So the first one, there's 4 main things. The first one is goalkeeper saves. Now, last season, basically, if a goalkeeper made a save, that would get them 2 BPS, so 2 bonus point system points as such. But this season, the shot location matters now. So a goalkeeper will get 3 BPS points if the shot was taken from inside the penalty area, and 2 BPS points if the shot was taken from outside of the area. And also with penalties, essentially they got 9 points for saving a penalty on top of the save points, whereas now they'll get 8 points on top of the save points. So that isn't too much of a change. The second part to it is to do with goal line clearances. So last season, basically, if a player made a goal line clearance, they'd get 3 BPS, whereas this season they're going to get 9 BPS. So I don't know how we kind of can track this or plan for it, but if there's certain players that get more goal line clearances, then they're more likely to get bonus points, essentially. So that's the second part to it. Third part of it relates to penalties, or goals scored from penalties. So what the case was last season, that if a forward scored a penalty, they'd get 24 BPS. If a midfielder scored a penalty, they'd get 18 BPS. And if a defender scored a penalty, they'd get 12 BPS. But this season, it's just going to be 12 BPS across the board. Doesn't matter if you're a forward, defender or midfielder. If you score a penalty from this season onwards, then you're getting 12 BPS regardless of your position. Right, and the last bonus point part of this is to do with tackles and successful tackles. Now, last season, how it was dealt with was it would be a net of your tackles won versus tackles lost. So let's say a player won 10 tackles, lost 5 tackles, so that would be 5 tackles won net, and you'd get 2 BPS points for each one. So 5 tackles won net mean you get 10 BPS points, whereas this season it's changing so that it's not tackles won, tackles lost, it's just tackles won. However many tackles won, you get 2 BPS points for that. So it doesn't matter how many tackles you lost, essentially. All you do is just take the amount of tackles you won, that's 2 BPS points per tackle won. Pretty simple. So yeah, that is all of the changes. I mean, there's some simple ones like the chips. I mean, we get 2 chips, 2 of each chip for this season. There's some more confusing one like the bonus points and the assists, and the AFCON one I think is pretty simple as well. But quite a few changes this year, some good, some not so good in my opinion. I really like the defensive contributions ones. I really like the assist changes. I think that's pretty good. Not too sure on the AFCON thing. I think that you should maybe have to plan better for it. Now you don't really have to plan for it, but changes have happened. Anyway, we'll get more into the changes when we start doing drafts and things like that. So if you don't already, then make sure you follow, make sure you like, make sure you also check out Fantasy Football Hub. Like I say, I get all my stats from there, and we're going to be looking at a lot more stats now given the defensive contributions and potentially the bonus point changes. So make sure you check that out. But like I say, do follow, do like, and I'll see you in the next one.